UFC and what's happening. Kevin, good to see you, my friend. Matt and Dave, I think this is the first time we've had you on BVB. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, you are a Pittsburgh guy. You're a Penguins fan and a Steelers fan, but you're a Pittsburgh guy. Am I right on that?
I'm even a Pirates fan, for God's sake.
We all are Pirates fans, Kevin. We're all old enough to remember that you maybe remember 71. I remember 79. I dream about it all the time, and the We Are Family teams. The Pirates are going to be good again, I promise.
1960, Dave.
Oh, wow.
There we go. I love it.
Oh, okay. Well, now you're a real OG. I mean, if anybody really remembers 60.
Well, I was a year old, so maybe I don't remember, but okay. I was alive.
Right. Well, that's fine. But, yeah, so were you ever in Forbes Field?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I heard that place was unbelievable.
I saw the Pirates play a number of games there. I remember seeing Willie Mays play against the Pirates. And I don't know, there must have been a magazine shot or something, because before the game, there was Willie Mays and Clemente standing there on the, like right by the dugout. Somebody was taking pictures of the two of them. So just pretty amazing. And they also had all the Alou brothers together, because I think two of the Alou brothers were playing for the Giants, and the third one was Matty Alou was playing for the Pirates.
Wow.
Oh, my.
Awesome.
There we go.
Awesome.
All right, Kevin, I wanted to bring you on because you wrote a really interesting piece on Yahoo Sports about where the company, the UFC, currently is. We've had some news this morning here in Las Vegas involving a fighter that we'll get to here in a second. But given where the company is as a whole, in the wake of what happened on New Year's Eve with Dana White, in the wake of the company with pay-per-view numbers going down, for someone who's not paying attention, like, where is the UFC right now as we start 2023?
Well, I think, as I wrote in my piece, Matt, the UFC was in a very strong position as it ended 2022. I mean, they have this, what was, I think, a 30-fight sellout streak. They've been setting gate records. Pay-per-views are down across the board. Boxing pay-per-views are, embarrassingly low. UFC pay-per-views are down from where they were a couple of years ago, but that's kind of a sign of the economy. So if you look at that just in that context, you're not that worried. But then you add in some of the stuff going on, like the brawl at the press conference that forced the change at UFC 278. Then you look at, this betting scandal that happened. I don't think it's actually the UFC's fault that it occurred, right? I mean, it was a fight trainer who was involved, but there needed to be better regulation and better organization of how you prevent this from getting out of control. Now we have the FBI investigating a betting thing. The Francis Ngannou thing the other day, the baddest man on the planet, and Dana ends up saying he was afraid to fight good competition. He wanted to fight lesser competition for big money. I mean, Dana said that for business reasons, right? He did not say that because he believes it. Nobody believes that Francis Ngannou was ducking anybody. But the fact is, they should have been able to get that deal done with him, which they have done historically. Rarely has there been a free agent that the UFC wanted back that they lost. They've lost free agents, but most of the time they lost guys. It was like, whether we want them back or not. Francis Ngannou, they wanted back. Nate Diaz, they wanted back. Then you add in Dana's slapping situation. And Dana is the company, right? Dana is so powerful in this company, and he has such a big role in it that you saw that what happened with the stock market. When it came out that, this happened, the stock market dropped significantly because they weren't sure what was going to happen with Dana. And then it went up when they saw that, Endeavor wasn't going to probably do something. So I think they face a lot of challenges. I think it's an overstatement to say they're on their way out, but they face a lot of challenges in the next year or two as they negotiate their new TV deal and some of the other things they try to work on.
That's exactly where I was going to go next. There's a lot of things right now in their face. And you just said, the FBI investigating and stuff. You're around it. And Matt just told me that you do a gambling podcast. How big is the gambling within the UFC culture between, we're hearing about the scandal, but you're just around it all the time. You cover the fights. We're in a vacuum here. The show's called Bostonian versus the Book. We look at sports through the gambling lens. So we understand it. I've been in the books and I've seen the growth of, UFC betting. It's going on an upward plateau. It has been. But how much is it around from you, like, in guys that cover it, as well as within the culture? Is it a big deal, the gambling part of it?
Well, here's the thing, Dave, that I think I would say is that, like, I covered sports betting for the Review Journal before I went to Yahoo Sports. And no, I wasn't covering this, but there was that Arizona State betting scandal. Who found it out? The sports books. A lot of times people are afraid of gambling, but the sports book industry, they help out a lot of times because
Yeah.
they alert people to things that are going on. You can't control what other people do, and sometimes people try to cheat the system, right? They try to rob banks, and they try to do all these crazy things. Whenever there's been scandals in the past, it's been the sports books alerting the officials saying, "Hey, there's something weird going on here," right?
Right.
So nobody is in this case accusing anybody of throwing fights or anything. But here's where things come up that become a problem. You have James Krause, who was one of the best coaches in the sport. He has a big gym. He had Brandon Moreno, who's fighting this weekend in a championship fight in his gym. He coached him the last time out. And all of a sudden, you see the fight with Derek Minner, and I can't pronounce the Chinese guy's last name.
Right.
But on November 5th, they had a fight in Las Vegas. Minner has a knee injury. They don't tell the Nevada Athletic Commission. Now, what people should know is that on Friday after the weigh-in, they see doctors. This is normal course of business.
Standard operating procedure. Everyone does this.
And they ask the fighters, what medications are you taking, or do you have any injuries, anything hurt? And they fill out a form. And both James Krause and Derek Minner said no injuries. Now Minner goes out in the fight. He throws a kick, immediately goes down, grabbing his knee. His opponent jumps on top of him, finishes him. I think the time was 1:07. Now all of a sudden it turns out sports books are saying, wait a minute, there was a ton of bets on the other guy to win in the first round, a ton of bets on the fight to go under 2.5. And it's like, so the Nevada Athletic Commission didn't know, the UFC didn't know, but somebody knew. Derek Minner was injured, right? And that's the problem. Like, I don't think that, Derek Minner necessarily threw the fight, but I think the allegation that's out there, or the suspicion that's out there, is that they didn't make an effort to keep it quiet, and that people who were betting. Now, the second thing, ESPN reported last week, in a very well done story, I thought, that James Krause is a betting agent for an offshore sports book, meaning kind of serving as a middleman. For people who don't know, he would go up to you and say, "Hey, if you want to make a bet with this particular sports book, come to me, and I'll take care of it for you." That now becomes a lot bigger problem, right? The UFC, before this broke, and I was the one that broke the story in October, they changed their policy, and they created a rule that said no UFC fighter, no UFC coach, or anybody involved with them can bet on UFC fights. They didn't say MMA fights, they said UFC fights. So that was added to their code of conduct in October. Did they know something when they added that? It sure looks like they did.
So this morning, Kevin, Jeff Molina, who is one of James Krause's fighters, who was adamant about, hey, this guy knows his stuff, go to the Discord channel. He talked about how smart, Krause was and all the ways he'll help you win bets. This is a Discord channel. People are paying $2,000 a month, up to $2,000 a month, to get the information from Krause. The Nevada State Athletic Commission this morning has extended that suspension. They've officially
temporary
suspended him.
suspension, though. Make sure you mention that.
Okay. For his involvement in a, quote, gaming scheme related to the James Krause investigation. Having these stories stay out there for the UFC, how much of a problem is this? That this is a drip, drip, drip situation with this story?
I think this is a tough one for them. Now, I think that if they handle it the right way, they can make this go away, right? I think, there was never any doubt about the NCAA basketball tournament the year that Arizona State had their betting scandal, right? It went on. People believed in the integrity of it. But if they don't cut this off, and this keeps happening, like you said, Matt, drip, 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 if stories keep coming up on new things happening, then I think you have problems. I mean, so they were right to ban anybody on the teams from betting. Now, like, how do you control that, right? That the problem is, if a fighter's wife walks into a sports book and makes a bet, do the sports book operators now, they have technology. They should know who the fighters are, who the coaches are. But do they know who the wives are, the girlfriends are, the guy next door? And that's where the issue is coming up. The integrity of the bets is that question at that point.
But see, in like from the sports book's point of view, it's hard enough to make the numbers, take the bets, make sure everything's right. Now we got to put it on us to know who the wives are and who the uncles are. It's a lot
Correct.
to ask and a lot of
And you can't do
cracks.
it.
You can't do it. You can't do it. Can the UFC exist without the betting, in your opinion, Kevin? Because now the lines are splashed up on every fight, every broadcast, everything sponsored, every ring post and a thing has a sports book sponsor. Are we it's a two-part question. Are we too close now with it being in everybody's face? And two, could the UFC exist if they said no more betting on this stuff?
Well, yes, I think they can. But here's the thing: like, let's go back. The NFL was hypocrites for many, many years, right?
Yes.
When sports betting wasn't legal, the NFL was built by sports betting. People were betting on sports. I remember when I was a kid, you get those little parlay sheets. You could fill them out, and you would bet on. I grew up in Pittsburgh; it was all over the place. Like, that's what people did, and the NFL became what it is in large part because of sports betting. Now,
Right.
So I think that the thing that the NFL did that the UFC is going to have to be careful about is when who was it? The Atlanta wide receiver got suspended last year.
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley. Yeah, he bet
Yep,
on a couple of games. Boom, done for a year. Maybe he hasn't been. The suspension hasn't been removed. The UFC is going to have to really enforce this, and if they have a fighter, of course their fighters are betting, on the sports. They know the sport better than anybody, right? They've been in there with these guys. They train with these guys. They know better than anybody. So if they find out that these guys are betting on fights involving UFC fighters, they got to take drastic action. And I hate to say that because these fighters, in a lot of cases, aren't making a ton of money, right? But for the integrity of the sport, they have to stop this, and they have to put a very big message out there that if you do this, and it's now in our code of conduct, you are risking your livelihood. And I mean, Molina got suspended by Nevada temporarily before they cut Minner, right? Now, the reason for cutting Minner was not because of the betting situation, although I think that might have a little to do with it. But the official stated reason was he lied and didn't disclose an injury that he should have disclosed. And so I think that, can it exist? Yes. Will it exist? Probably. I think it will. But I think that they have to really be vigilant, and it's not going to be, not going to be easy. It's going to be a difficult time. But you know what? When you're a multi-billion-dollar company, you got big boy problems.
Figure it out. Yeah.
So this weekend, you mentioned it, Kevin, that a UFC 283, the co-main event, involves Brendan Moreno against Devin Figueiredo. It's the fourth time these guys are fighting, but they're fighting for a belt. Is this a significant distraction for a guy like Moreno, who was the most high-profile James Krause fighter up until the scandal, and now he had to part ways right before his last fight? He had to part ways with James Krause. Krause won't corner him this coming weekend. How difficult is that to switch gyms before a title fight?
He got lucky at the timing of this, right? So he had just started work with Krause for this fight, and then it happened. So he immediately moved back to Las Vegas, got hooked up with Saif Sood, who's a very good coach from Fortis MMA. He was in Las Vegas, so Brandon coach worked with him. So I don't think it's really going to affect him. I spoke to Brandon at length about it. I'll have a story on Brandon later today, actually, about that. And I don't think it's going to negatively affect him. Win or lose, I don't think it's going to affect him. Figueiredo is a great fighter, and they have a lot, they're very close to each other. It's kind of like Ali and Frazier were so close whenever they fought. And I think that they're going to have a close fight this time, regardless of who wins. But I think Brandon, and Brandon of all people, he's such an ebullient, happy, charismatic guy. Don't think he lets much bother him. So I think he's going to be fine. I don't think it'll affect him. If he loses the fight, I don't think it's going to be because of the coaching situation.
Kev, last one for me before Matt gets one more, whatever, and wraps it up. You wrote an article about your health situation and, everything that happened. And literally, I mean, I didn't know you, but after you wrote that, I felt like I knew you because we all go through these things. And it was so powerful of just being able to say, how you said it and all these things. So, one, how is your health? And two, how is your state of mind just going forward? I mean, you're covering guys where, there's some serious hurt business. going on and you're around this stuff. How are you able to do it, and how are you feeling right now with everything going on?
Well, the good work news is I feel great. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow, so that's good. I'm
That's good.
staying on top of my health, keeping in track of my doctor, so that's all good. Um, I think I have loved since I was a kid boxing. Right, I actually went. I was 6 years old at the time, I believe it was. My dad wanted to go. He took me as quote unquote a birthday gift. That was a way to sell it to my mom. But I went to Sugar Ray Robinson's final fight. So I saw the
Ooh.
greatest fighter of all time as when I was 6 years old. And I've been a boxing fan all my life. And when I learned about MMA, I became an MMA fan. I've covered kickboxing, I've covered Muay Thai, I've covered all these different aspects, and I love the fight game. I still love it. But as I've gotten older, I have seen 7 fighters die in the ring, all boxers. Terrible. I had one of them fall on top of me, fell through the ropes, and Dave Koken and I were sitting at the ring at the Orleans, and this fighter fell on top of me, and then he later passed away. And that's hard to see. And so I've become a big advocate for fighter safety. And a lot of times, I see people complaining about stoppages, and I say we have to quit complaining. There may have been an early stoppage, but the referee is in there looking, and he sees. And I'm more critical of referees who let fights go on as opposed to referees who say no too much. You know what? Because if the referee makes a mistake and stops it too soon, you can always rematch and come back and fight another day. But if the referee lets it go one punch or one kick too long, that's disaster. And that is hard to take. And thank God that I haven't seen, there have been fighters that have passed, but just not at fights that I have been at. And I tell you, it really has an impact on you when you sit there and you're covering this fight as a sporting event and you watch somebody taken out on a stretcher or collapse, later. It's a life-altering event, and you realize how precious life is, and it's something that you don't ever want to see. So I will always, always, always advocate for fighter safety, and not just fighters, football players. Look at these guys getting concussions and CTE and all that. So people were worried about whether Tua was going to play. I said, forget about Tua. He's done. Don't. I mean, to me, I think Tua would be smart to retire. Look at Troy Aikman said. Look at some of these guys have said, your life is not worth it. You're taking a huge risk by any contact sport where you're getting a blow to the head. And if you go ahead and play after you've had multiple concussions and you've been in a situation that Tua's been in, you're just asking for your life to be miserable, for 30, 40 years down the road.
Kev, we'll end with this. It's not often that a T-Mobile Arena employee breaks major news, but they did by posting the Jon Jones and Cyril Gahn March, I think, 3rd fight billboard out in front of the arena that everybody went, wait, what? That's happening? Well, yeah, that's how it happened. What are your expectations for Jon Jones at heavyweight? And this is for the vacant title. Obviously, you mentioned Francis Ngannou, who has just appeared actually on, I think, on Ariel Helwani's show this morning, talking a bit about why that contract went south with the UFC. But what do you make of Jon Jones and him coming back here at heavyweight?
I like Jon Jones to win this fight. I mean, like on the simple, the first line I saw, Jones was an underdog, and I guess he's already been bet into the favorites position. But I like Jones because if you look at it, you go, Cyril Gahn got out-wrestled by Francis Ngannou. Whoever thinks Francis Ngannou is a wrestler, right? That was great coaching by Eric Nixick to get that set up, that game plan. I think Jon Jones, even being away 3 years, I like Jones. But, on the other hand, he's been away I think it'll be 37 months by the time he fights. Cyril Gahn is a world-class athlete, a world-class fighter. And I think, it's a true threat. So I think the line being close is a good line. I'll have to see as we see Jon work. And, I haven't seen his body, because he's added a lot of muscle, right? He was 25, 230 and would cut down to 205. And now he's like, the last I knew, somebody told me he weighed 255.
Oh, wow. By the way, you still got the Pittsburgh accent. You said he got Don. You said Don. I heard it. Love it. Love it.
Man, his brothers are huge, so it makes sense.
Why not?
He's got a football body and frame to go that big. Man, I'm looking forward to it.
He's the little guy of the group, right?
Right. He's the
Right.
smallest of all of them, and he could cut down. One more. Ngannou against Fury. Is Ngannou going to go fight in the top level fighters? Is he going to boxing to fight up against the big boys?
It's ridiculous. He has zero chance against Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is one of the greatest heavyweight boxers who ever freaking lived. And I don't understand why people don't get this. When Floyd Mayweather fought Conor McGregor, Matt, what did I write? I wrote before the fight, this is a farce. There's no chance.
Thank you.
But they made a ton of money, and now everybody wants to try. Like, it's just the same thing as these guys want to fight Jake Paul. Francis,
we'll save that for the next interview. We'll save the Jake Paul discussion the next time we have you.
Kevin, great stuff, man. Thank you for the time.
Hey, we're going to go have lunch at some point, Kevin, too. Great meeting you, man.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Kevin Iole at Kevin I on Twitter to follow him from Yahoo Sports. Great combat sports writer, one of maybe my favorite combat sports writer